So it's New Year's Day, so it's the 1st of January 2020, sorry 2022. Decided to have a bit of a stretch and walk around Pinces garden. So again, this will just be a sort of general short walk and talk of all the plants and trees that I can identify. Pinces Gardens is a lovely green space which is managed by the Exeter City Council. Like I say, you can see the small bowling green there. Lots of local history here. It used to actually be a nursery many years ago, and that's why you've got so many interesting plants and trees to this day. There's actually 5 main entrances to Pinces Gardens, but currently only 4 are accessible, as one is still being repaired at the moment. So I'll try and minimise the amount of people that I get in the video and focus on the trees and the fantastic plants as well. So the trees in front of me here, these are plum trees. So there's actually like a small row here. These are purple leaf plums here, these 2. As you can see, they're multi-stem. The smaller ones here are still plum trees, but your more typical common plum. And these 2 interesting evergreens here, these I believe are a type of Chinese privet, but I do need to do some more research on these trees. As I said, these are evergreens, and when in flower, which is not quite yet, they have these fantastic small black flowers, which is so unusual in the plant world. But as I said, got to do a bit more study on them. So we'll look at this section of Pinces Gardens. So that's one of the 5 entrances, and these lovely trees here. So the tree in front of me is a member of the hawthorn family. Again, requires a solid ID to be sure exactly what type of cultivar or variety. This interesting specimen here is Acer Nogundo, which is box elder, or known as maple ash, I believe. But very interesting tree. We don't have many box elders in Exeter. Now this one is a female tree. I'll quickly show you how you can tell, because you've got all these fantastic, you can see dangling in the wind, these samaras. So the samara is also known as keys. Difficult to see, it's quite a, although it's not, the weather's okay, it's just a bit grey. But these are the samaras of the tree, the fruit. So these papery winged little mini helicopters which get dispersed by the wind. And like I say, this is only one of a few female box elders. There is a male box elder at St Thomas Park, and there is also one not far from here on public soil. So like I say, that's box elder. Now in front here, what you'll see, from what I've been told of the history, this is referred to as the old rose garden. But again, since as long as I've been here, other than it being extremely well pruned and hacked back in preparation for spring growth, not a great deal has changed. There did used to be a very nice, I believe, multi-stemmed silver birch tree, but a few years ago, pre-COVID, and you can actually see the remains of the stump now, so I'll be careful where I'm standing, but there it is. So this used to be a birch tree, and you can just about see to the various fungi that white papery bark. So exactly what type of birch, unfortunately I didn't study it enough when it was alive, but that was the birch tree that unfortunately is actually completely uprooted, so possibly some sort of root plate failure. Difficult to say, but it was had to be removed. Not sure what was actually replanted in its place. Lots of variegated varieties. This is an interesting one. Again, not much at this time of the year. This is a type of elder. This is actually a black lace elder from memory. Very unusual deep purple black leaves. This small tree in front probably gives it away by the cool little catkins. You can't really get too close. That's a common hazel, so native, lots of hazel. So this interesting one here is Persian ironwood. Has some really interesting bark. As you can see, those lovely orange patches on it. So the bark is very striking on Persian ironwood. I mean, you can see all the lichen on the branches as well. It's actually just in preparation of beginning to flower, and it's the male sort of flowers that sort of really strike it out. There is another larger Persian ironwood in Pinces Gardens. It's that one I'll focus on because it's easier to get to. Seeming very pretty. Potentially some type of dogwood. And then you've got your iconic birch. Look at that. Although most of the trunk's covered by ivy, you can still see the striking white characteristics. And then really good ground covering of ivy. Various types of grasses as well. And good old elephant ears as well in the mix. Very important that we have not just bare open soil, but we need to ensure there's always good ground cover. I know a lot of people frown upon ivy, but this sheet of green, the amount of wildlife that lives in here and feeds on here will be considerably higher than just boring plain soil. So I don't really oppose ivy because I think it gives more benefits than it gives problems. But as you can see, when it's growing up on walls, that can be a problem if it's not maintained. But we've got to think of nature, because unfortunately the human race has been doing quite the opposite for the past several thousand years. Anyway, focus is on the trees of the park. These are pretty cool. As far as I can tell, these are river birch, which I do want to actually try to get close to if I don't get caught up. Let's have a look. I want to get close without disturbing too much of the ground. Okay. The only reason being is that the bark is so different compared to your typical birch bark. Very flaky. You can see those lovely bits of orange as well. Really, especially as you get higher up. I mean, look at that. It's just like flaking away. Brilliant. But I believe, and actually that specimen there is even more sort of peeling and flaking. But yeah, type of birch, pretty sure it's a type of river birch. So we're now going to walk outside of this area, which is technically the old rose garden, and then we're going to head to the left side, as I would call it. So again, behind me is the female box elder and that type of hawthorn, and again you've got the lovely plum tree, again ivy. So the trees in front here, you can see straight away evergreen, holly, again a native species of the UK, very welcome sight to see. And this really stands out, doesn't it? These lovely sort of mixed reds and yellows, and I mean, looking at it here, pretty sure type of dogwood. Difficult to say until it's in full flower and leaf if it's a variegated variety or not, but yeah, type of dogwood. And you can see, I think, that sort of shrub that is acting as a wall, I believe they call that the gold dust plant, but yeah, just a very pretty evergreen with waxy leaves, and you can see those sort of speckly spots, which is probably why they call it the gold dust tree, shrub. Again, some type of cypress. I need to get more identification on that one. Again, everyone's welcome to sort of put their own comments on this video if you think you know the exact species cultivar, because the more information we can get, the better. Another lovely birch. Look at that. And then it looks, I'd imagine, looks like some sort of, I was going to say witch's broom, but I'm almost going to say that looks more like an animal has made that rather than witch's broom. Now this is the second Persian ironwood I wanted to show, and as I said, it's a interesting type of, well, it's sort of cross between a tree and a shrub really, and I'll let you make your own mind up about that, but as we get closer you'll see the fantastic peeling sort of orange on the bark, and we will get closer. It looks like you. Here we are. Look at that. And look at all this ground cover. I mean, the whole ground is covered in Persian ironwood leaves. Fantastic. What we want to focus on is at this time of the year for Persian ironwood, it is beginning to get ready to make lovely flowers. As you can see, these really distinct, small, almost, they're not quite black, but dark brown buds. And inside you've got, I believe, mostly male flowers, which are like these bright pink flowers. So come the end of this month, going into February, this tree will be transformed into a canopy of bright pink. Absolute sight to see. And interestingly, as I say, the leaf won't really break out until after it's completed its flowering cycle. So if we have a look here, this one might be a bit better. There we go. You might be able to see there. That's easier to see the flowers, isn't it? So that's Persian ironwood. Fantastic tree. And then just looking at some of the sort of hedge line there, I'd say that that looks like hornbeam, small hornbeam trees, and you can see it's still kept some of the winter leaves, which means it's showing signs of being marcescent. Like some blue tips, I think. And you'll probably see straight away what stands out is just complete bright yellow. This is an interesting type of tree. A bit more focus on all the flowers. But as you can see, this is a real eye catcher. It's a type of witch hazel, which is famous for bringing bright colours through, well, in some cases the end of December right through to January, February. That's better, isn't it? You can see that. So yeah, witch hazel, lovely plant. And you can get different cultivars and varieties with sort of deep reds and pinks and purples, but this one is just yellow. And then we've got another holly there. And then we've got these interesting evergreens here. So this is Mahonia, which is widely planted, often in car parks, all sorts of green spaces. And at this time of the year, because it's not native to this country, it is flowering and very, I mean, I can see some bees on there. There's a big bumblebee there. And some flies as well. I'm just about to see, there we go. See how important it is that at this time of the year we have this food source for our, I mean, there's honeybees there as well, not just bumblebees but flies. A wide variety of insect pollinators are making the most of this this food that's available in, like I say, the beginning of January. So it just shows you that actually having non-native species in the right way is very important to our native wildlife. It smells lovely. It's really, you can really smell it. Such a highly scented plant. Need to ID that one, possibly a type of viburnum. And this is a nice magnolia, which sort of arches over this path here. At this time of the year, this type of magnolia will be flowering not too long far away, but the buds are the iconic large hairy buds. That's the friendly wood pigeon over there. Again, you can probably just about see in the background, lovely silver birch. So we'll actually have a quick look at that. And again, you've got all the ground cover. Some of this has been swept away. So important that all this foliage and twigs, branches, pieces of the tree is allowed to get absorbed back into the soil system. I mean, look at that first characteristic bark. So this is a good aged silver birch of some type. Stunning canopy. Really stands out. Right. So again, along this back, it looks like more hornbeam hedging from what I can gather. And this one is, well, my favourite tree species, beech. So the characteristic smooth grey bark. Look at it, lovely. It's a good sized beech tree. As I said, native to the UK. Deciduous tree. Shallow rooted, so it does mean unfortunately they are at higher risk of wind throw. Interesting lichen there. I love it how you've got that like linear effect on beech trees. Right, so let's carry on. So we have a yew tree here, so that's just a common yew. Hazard a guess looking at its structure, that looks like a male yew. And then another birch tree. And another yew. Very maintained yew, so all the undergrowth, like all the lower canopy has been sliced, but probably because it's, like I say, you can see it's right between two pavements, but yeah, well maintained yew tree, and as I said, yew trees will live for hundreds or thousands of years. So very tough trees with lots of history. Evergreen, native to the UK. Extremely poisonous trees. Virtually all parts of the tree are toxic. So as beautiful as this tree is, you must respect it and admire it, but not really eat any part of it. So what we'll do now, we're going to sort of head, again I've got to be careful because there's people walking, I don't really want to be filming people. This is another type of yew, but this one is a slightly different one. I believe it's a Chinese yew. I still need to get a solid ID. In fact, you might be lucky that, here we go, look. You see the, focus on my hand. Yeah, so this is definitely not your typical yew. As I said, I need to double check, but I believe it's a Chinese yew. But very similar characteristics. Oops, very muddy. And then this lovely tree here, type of apple tree. Again, unsure of the cultivar, but when it's making fruit, it makes these tiny apples. They are literally the size of marbles. I don't think there's any left on the ground because I think all the wildlife has eaten them all. But your typical flaky bark. Lots of moss growing on here as well. This is a good sized apple tree. But as I said, until I know the cultivar, I wouldn't be able to say if the apples have any edibility rating because they are so small. It might just be some apple trees are just grown just for their beauty rather than having, you know, like cooking apples, that sort of thing. And then you've got yew again. So the interesting thing here, this, as you can see, like barrier is actually Irish yew. The Irish yew is typically a more upright species. Typically darker green needles. Again, there are different cultivars that you can get some very bright colours, but Irish yew, the ones that I've come across in Exeter seem to be mostly female. So yew is a dioecious in nature, which means typically male or female. And I don't know, again, the history of the planting, etc., but the study I've done so far in Exeter, virtually all the Irish yew trees appear to be female, and all the common yew trees appear to be male. Lovely type of cypress, it appears to be. Again, another holly. And it doesn't look it, but that is actually a giant redwood. But not really seeing many cones compared to some of the ones I've come across, which are absolutely covered in cones. It doesn't appear to have decided to produce any female cones yet. I'm sure it's got a good reason for that. So just turning back quickly, some sort of variegated cypress again. Again, apologies, my study of evergreen trees isn't as comprehensive as deciduous, so once I get a solid ID on these fantastic trees, I will certainly let everyone know. But look at that lovely variegation. And you can see a tiny seed tree, I mean, just about to see inside there will be the seed which gets dispersed. Yeah, so I will get a solid idea on the fantastic tree at some point. But interesting how it's got such curved branches that will go back and forward. Look at that. It might be a type of cedar or cypress, but like I say, once I've done more study on these evergreens of Pinces gardens, I can update this video. So sort of turning back now, again you've got another iris, not iris yew, common yew here. If I take a few steps back, so a more broad tree as a whole, common yew, compared to iris yew, which is typically more bright. Now this tree in front is a dawn redwood. A lot of people think it's dead. Actually, these trees are very unusual. So they are a conifer. Most people think of the word of conifer as evergreen. This one breaks the rules of that. It's a deciduous conifer. So it does bear needles, but it does drop them during the cold season. So you might see, we just have a look up to the canopy, the small fruits of the tree. So dawn redwood is monoecious in nature, which means the male and female parts of the tree, the male and female flowers on the same tree but different parts. I don't think there's any cones low enough here. Maybe if I just spin round. Don't think I'll be that lucky. Most of the cones are out of reach. Although, here we go. Just gently pull this down, hoping it'll focus. There we go. So, dawn redwood. Endangered species, unfortunately. You don't need two guesses to find out why. Interesting with dawn redwood, as you can see, they have a habit of lots and lots of branches all the way right from the bottom to the top, making them actually really good climbing trees. Because of that, a lot of the park trees, typically, the councils will actually remove a lot of the lower limbs to prevent people from climbing up. But in this case, it's actually so dense, you'd struggle to climb that, and there's a lot of brambles as well. But yeah, this time next year could be different. It could be, I'd imagine there'll be some maintenance from the park team. So now we'll spin round to see here. I've got to remember this was a Japanese yellow cedar, I believe. I need to double check that. You might be able to see some. There we go. This is lovely. Sort of like these golden yellow tips. And whilst we're here so close, this is a really interesting one. So this is just known as a silk tassel bush, and you can see why, because it looks like it's just these tassels of silk. Lovely. And there's tens of thousands on this tree, I'd imagine. Or shrub, sorry. This is a male, so these again are dioecious, so male or female, but it's typically the male ones that get planted because it's the male ones that actually really stand out. The female flowers aren't, well, they're just nowhere near as distinct as the male ones. So that is quite common in the world of planting. Should you have a tree or shrub that's dioecious in nature, so male or female, you tend to find one will stand out more than the other when it comes to flower or fruiting. Smell can play a big part of that as well. So the tree of heaven is a good example where you've got male and female trees, and they tend to plant the female trees because the male ones are quite pongy. Again, I've never seen a male tree of heaven in Exeter. They're all female, probably for that reason. So and sometimes it's a shame really, because it means that should you come across a dioecious tree, again male or female, there's no guarantee you'll ever come across its partner because of the planting habits of how we've been doing things, which I think is a shame because you know, bearing in mind Tree of Heaven is an example, it's not even native to this country, it's just planted like so many trees for its overall beauty. I mean, some people don't like the Tree of Heaven, I don't mind it, but yeah, we've got 2 Tree of Heavens in St Thomas Park. There are none in Pinces Gardens. So anyway, just following up from there, that was which I believe was the Japanese yellow cedar, the male silk tassel bush. The evergreen I've still got to get a solid ID. Again, I don't want to make a guess because it's probably going to be wrong. This lovely tree in front here is an ash tree, and it's great to see such a good sized ash tree in a park, because again, because of ash dieback, the landscape in Devon has changed massively, and there's, well, as I said, with the ash dieback situation, I don't know what the actual long-term plan is, but this is an ash tree in Pinces Gardens, and usually they're dioecious in nature, so either all male or female. This tree, if you can see all the little bunches of keys, which is what a lot of people call the fruiting part of the tree. Oh, sorry pigeons. I will get a closer look, but I can see straight away, although there's tens of thousands of these papery winged fruits, samaras, there is also ash flower gall. Now, that means this tree actually must be male and female, because ash flower gall only attacks and infects male flowers. So interestingly, although most ash trees are male or female, it does happen, again, fascinating why or how, but these trees know what they're doing, and this tree is male and female. Whether that gives it more resistance to ash dieback, difficult to say, but this is a male and female ash, and in fact I think we're going to be lucky. There's a low enough branch where you can actually see all of this happening. So the papery winged parts of the tree here, the samaras, contain the seeds, so they are the female parts. So once it's the female flowers develop into these papery samaras which get blown and dispersed by the wind. But if you notice these rather not so pretty brown clumpy messes, well actually they are technically the male flowers that have gone a bit wrong. So it's not uncommon in the world of trees that galls can greatly change the appearance of the flower or the fruit. So oak trees are the most common, where the acorns, or even the flowering parts of the tree, which then turn into acorns, get transformed to make houses for the baby wasps. But anyway, this is what's left of the male flower that has been transformed by the flower gall, and you've got the distinct black buds, and I love ash trees for this. Someone told me once that they look a bit like rabbit claws, but I just think that ash trees are a great species of tree to study. Again, native to the UK. And this is the bark of an ash tree. Lovely, isn't it? It's just, and all that moss and lichen on there. I mean, the amount of life and biodiversity. I mean, I sometimes wonder if I was the size of an ant, scaling a tree like this. And you've got to remember that while we just glimpse at things like this moss, which is nothing to us, if you're a small creature like an ant, that's no different than walking through a forest or a huge landscape. And the terrain, look at it. It's almost like valleys and mountains. As I said, we just completely unappreciate how much biodiversity trees like this give us. And it saddens me when all these developments get plonked down out of concrete moulds and smash all the local wildlife, remove perfectly healthy, mature trees, and they get a small tick box from the planners and councillors to put lollipop trees down, which only last a few years. But anyway, so we're not talking about the UK planning, because that's an absolute mess. We're here to talk about these fantastic trees at Pinces Gardens. So this huge wall in front of me, and this is tall. I mean, it must be 12 to 15 feet tall. Is an Irish yew wall. Again, great for hedging. Again, acting as a natural screen, so much more effective than putting boring fence panels or even concrete and other artificial ways to create a barrier. I mean, this does the job. I mean, you can see all the spider webs. I mean, this, and as I walk backwards, you will see just how big this is. But God, the amount of insects, spiders, and don't forget of all the nesting birds. I mean, because it's an evergreen, it gives like I say, a shield all year round. So it must be a very popular choice for nesting birds too. What is interesting is if we walk back, sorry, I've got to watch where I step, because as beautiful as this park is, there's a lot of irresponsible dog owners. Now if we span, so you can see our common ash, and then from here you've got this barrier of Irish yew. But that is what stands out. That isn't Irish yew. And you can tell because it's more bushy. And you can tell as well is that that's actually a common yew. And that's a male common yew because you can see the buds are just different. So I can only assume that either that was naturally planted, or I'm more likely to say that probably accidentally got mixed up with the planting of this Irish yew, because it's about the same age. So I'd imagine that was it's not a problem, because again it adds to, as far as wildlife's concerned, it's still a place to eat and sleep and live in. Lovely type of silver birch. Need to confirm the exact cultivar or type. And a spin round. We're going to walk through the wisteria arch in a minute, because that's one of the focus points of Pinces Gardens. If you're going to come to Pinces Gardens, you need to walk through the wisteria archway. So, this lovely apple tree, I need to go back because it's actually, just so you can appreciate it. Sorry. There we go. I've only just finished studying this apple tree. I'm in the process of finishing my uploads to various social platforms. It's an apple tree. It's a cultivar known as John Downey. And okay, at this time of the year, like most deciduous trees, would often go unnoticed. But straight away, you're probably going to ask, what on earth is that? That ball. Well, that's mistletoe. And mistletoe is a common association with apple trees. And it's difficult to see, but you'll have to trust me. You might just be able to see those tiny white berries. Now, I'm sorry, this is zooming in on an iPhone. Mistletoe is a parasite, okay? So, as lovely as it is, and of course, it's highly celebrated around Christmas time, it is like I say, a parasite of a lot of deciduous trees, but apple seems to be its host, its main host. And the way mistletoe is spread is when birds like pigeons, magpies, crows, those sort of birds, they can quite happily digest the berries that are poisonous to us. And what they'll do is when they rub their beaks on the various branches and twigs, sometimes the seeds get spread, and the seeds then get lodged in bits of the bark, various twigs, and just like I say, usually the more aerial parts of the tree. And very cleverly, it invades the tree's, like I say, xylem phloem system, which is where the waters and sugars and other nutrients get transported. And don't forget, trees have an immune system. They're not these dumb objects that planners would look at them as. They do have an immune system, and that's how they can fight off a lot of disease and fungus. But mistletoe is adapted to bypass that, and then it, like I say, essentially becomes fused. It's a part of the tree. So when you look at mistletoe, you only ever see the leaves and the berries, but when you actually look really close at mistletoe, you can appreciate just how clever it is, and it's, like I say, literally a part of the tree. Mistletoe is dioecious as well, so it's male or female typically. And if it's got berries, it means it's female. Anyway, so this is the lovely apple tree that I've been studying. And lovely again, common characteristic of holly is it's an undergrowth, understory species. So it always grows typically underneath trees. Beech and oak is common, but in this case, happily growing underneath this apple tree. And here we go. We've got slugs that are, and look, wood lice, all making a home in these little crevices and cracks, and again, you couldn't document how much life is in this park tree. So anyway, apple, John Downing. This lovely small tree in front is a type of flowering cherry. Again, not sure of the cultivar, but a very pretty cherry when it's in flower. And tiny tree at the back, that one in the cage, is a Luckham oak. We'll talk about that more because there's another one which I'll show you as I walk down. Brilliant little oak tree. We'll talk quickly about this one. So this is the Japanese larch, certainly a larch tree, and the study that I've done makes me believe it's a Japanese variety. So larch is typically a construction timber tree. It's a softwood, so it means it grows a lot quicker than hardwood trees. And again, unfortunately, its life typically is in plantations by the tens of thousands to be cut up, made into various furniture and so on. But luckily this one has made its way to Pinces gardens, where it's, like I say, used and appreciated for its natural beauty. Very noisy herring gulls, but look at them. So Japanese larch is a conifer, but if you notice, it's got no leaves. So unlike most conifers, the Irish yew is, like I say, coniferous in nature. Its needles aren't there. So this is a deciduous conifer. So just like the Dawn redwood, where it drops its needles, this one is also the same. So a deciduous conifer. Right. So at this time of the year, there won't be so much of its normal beauty, but you can see straight away on the ground, it will drop these really cool cones. So just look at the structure of those cones. The edges are like lipped, which again, normally you'd associate that with a Japanese larch. So anyway, this is, like I say, that's naturally been shed off the tree. This is the bark of a Japanese larch. Flaky, and then, like I say, you've got these lovely streaks of orange. And as you go up, I mean, it's a very tall, straight tree. Again, you can see why it's a typical timber tree, because timber trees have to conform to a particular growth habit. They can't really be multi-stem. It needs to be one central trunk, and again, the wider the better, and then that way, that's how they end up in the timber industry. But like I say, luckily this one here is here for its ornamental purposes. And if you just take a few steps back, you can see all of the cones. So again, these are the female parts of the tree. Now, this tree is going to transform completely soon. So March, April time is the flowering season. At this time of the year, it's just preparing. So here are the twigs and buds. I mean, even again, this branch, small branch, and look at that, all these small twigs are covered in lichen. And that's just one small section of the tree. But yeah, come March, April, in flowering, this will be an absolute joy to see. So the female flowers are what really stand out. So come March, April time, you'll see, they call them larch roses. So if we just grab a cone, I'll have to move over here actually because I'm not tall enough. Here we go. Imagine these, but a deep striking pink and smaller. And that's what the tree is like in sort of late spring. The male flowers are extremely small and yellowish in nature because their job is to release the pollen to get onto the female parts of the flower, which will be these but pink, and then eventually they mature into these wooden structures, and inside will have all the seeds, and that is the Japanese larch. Lovely. So that covers the Japanese larch. Now we'll move on to here, which I believe is Austrian pine, the youngish one. See if we can get some of the cones, and we can certainly get some of the buds in. It's always good to ID as many parts of the tree as you can. So the needle clusters are in pairs, in twos, and when we can find, so you can see some of the male remnants of the male flowers are clustered there. What we want to see though is the female cones that have matured, which I'm hoping we can find some. You can see some that are up there. I want to try and grab, here we go. I'm going to have to be very careful, but there we go. So that's your cone. Again, pretty sure an Austrian pine. Oh, even better, look, there's one on the ground there. Widely planted in the UK. See these quite a lot. And then this is another giant redwood, although again, not fully grown by a long shot, but nice to see. Just about, it's brilliant. That's a female cone, quite a small one actually. They're usually more, almost like the size of a golf ball. So it's good to see that it is actually now making, actually I can see closer, it's difficult, but at the very top of the tree, which is what you'd expect, the female cones are up there. So we're lucky that this must have got blown off by the wind. But like I said, this is a fairly young giant redwood. What we'll do now, we'll take a spin back, walk past the other side, so we can, because there's some nice mature trees on the side. Again, you've got your Irish yew as your natural hedge. And that fantastic silverback. This has only recently been repaired. Again, the roof got damaged years ago, and it's taken them, it feels like an eternity, because they managed to get St Sidwell's Point knocked up very quickly at great taxpayers' expense. Yet to just re-slate a roof feels like it took a decade. Anyway, again, that's the politics of our local council. Tree in front, type of purple leaf plum. And unfortunately, we have the evidence of the human race. Costa, statues, cans, glass bottles. Enough said, really. And this fantastic tree, which I'm going to have to show you from a distance. This is a maidenhair, which is covered in ivy. We try and go up, and you can see when you look at the twigs and the branches, it's got almost like a very stubby appearance. So this is a maidenhair. This one's a female. So in nature they're dioecious, so male or female. Interestingly, in Exeter, the only maidenhairs I've come across are female, and apparently they're usually planted, the male ones, because as beautiful as the female ones are, they do make these, their fruit is this small, like orange type, large marble sized ball, which is a bit pongy. Again, it doesn't bother me, but usually the planting, typically the male. But yeah, we're lucky, all the ones I've seen in Exeter are female. But it would be good to come across a male one. So that's your maidenhair. You might actually be able to, it's a bit difficult, but there is one remaining fruit on there, right there. You see that in my shaky hand guy. So that's what you're looking at. They're like, not the size of golf balls, I'd say the size of large marbles. Orange in colour. I'm surprised that's still on the tree actually, because usually, come October, November, the ground is littered in, oh, even better, look. So this one's been trodden on or squashed, but if I try and, without dropping it, muck it, right, twice, right. So, well, I suppose it's almost cherry sized, isn't it? But that's your fruit of a maidenhair, and like I say, orange in colour when it's not gone rotten. I'm surprised to see one like this at this time of the year. But as I said, well, you can see what's left of all the lovely fan type leaves of maidenhair. They're like all gone brown, which is your typical, colour of late autumn. But as I say, if you catch it right, maidenhair's leaf colour is a bright, striking gold, and then of course it drops all the fruit, which are those sort of like large cherry sized orange balls. So if I step back a bit, you should hopefully be able to appreciate this maidenhair. as much as I do. I'll sort of set quite far back. And then that large tree, or large two trees, which is on the road behind Pinces garden, they're copper beech trees. And there's also one here. Look at that, really the big tree. As I said, it's common beech that's native to the UK, but copper beech isn't technically a true native of the UK, but these are widely planted. I mean, there's 3 here. There might have been more, but there's actually another one at the bottom there, sorry. So I'm assuming years ago they planted the copper beeches as street trees, and thankfully most of them have been let to get big. So yeah, fingers crossed that will remain the way for many years to come. So what we'll do now, we're going to just go back to the top part of Pinces garden and then just have a look at the Luckham oak. So I think again the pink one in flower, type of viburnum by the look of it. This very hacked back hedge, I think what's left of a purple leaf plum, from memory. Need to get an idea on that one. What we want to have a look at is here. So this is a Luckham oak. Now unfortunately I'm not going to really be able to get too much of this tree, but if I just gently pull that down without breaking anything, that's your leaves. It's not focusing right. Isn't that annoying when it won't focus? Oh, there we go. So, lovely tree. Luckham oak. Like I say, that's a natural cross between cork and turkey oak. But it was William Luckham who discovered that in the UK, and that's why it's got coined the Luckham oak. So we actually have some local heritage there. I say the whole place is full of history. You can actually see just these 2 very tall evergreens in the background. There's an allotment behind Pinces Gardens, and they're actually giant redwoods. So you can see, if I just point here, that's a young giant redwood there. So almost, it looks a bit like a Christmas tree, your typical triangular shaped evergreen. And then, as it matures, and they are pretty tall, these 2 giant redwoods, they lose that characteristic sort of triangular, and they sort of like bush out more, and then they slowly will get more flat on top. But yeah, interesting tree species. So we're gonna head back, walk through the Pinces archway, and then there's a small section at the front of the Pinces gardens that will talk about some of the trees there. So you can see that apple tree, which sort of is at the end of this pavement. So we're just about to come to the wisteria arch. So this is the highlight of Pinces Gardens, where quite often when it's in flower, which I think from memory about May time usually, this is transformed into a mixture of like lavender, light pink, your typical wisteria flower colour. And then we'll just show you just the actual sort of side of it there. Right. And then we're going to walk through it. Again, at this time of the year, not much happening because it's the dormant season. Appreciate just how old this is. I'm looking at the gnarled and knotty bark. Lovely. I mean, I think that is just as attractive as all the flowers. Look at it. It's just, I just love it how it just twists and snakes everywhere. You have to be careful. I mean, this is head height, so I've got to go underneath there. So you can, like I say, I mean, I'm an average height, but I have to just watch my head a few times. Look at that. That's just brilliant. Right, I've got to bend down a bit. There we go. Devise the exterior action of the day. Right, so this I appreciate now gone over an hour, which is probably my longest stream ever, but I wanted to try and cover as much of Pinces Gardens with the knowledge that I have. Again, I'm by no means an expert of all trees. I love all trees, but my study has been mainly deciduous trees. I'm very welcome to any suggestions or feedback on solid identification, especially evergreens. Again, that's the dawn redwood. I believe that was the Japanese yellow cedar. I just want to focus back on one of the evergreens which I do need to get a solid idea on. Not this one, because I know that's giant redwood, but it's this variegated tree in front here. And doesn't that look, I mean, it looks cool, but it's just so almost random to have a branch twist back on itself. It almost looks like an ear type shape. But again, that's why I just love every tree has its own story. Yeah, as I said, as soon as I can get a full 100% ID on this tree, I will update the comments on the video, and I could throw up a link to what's 3 words, because most people use that these days. Very important that if you are going to ID a tree, get as much information as you can, as many different parts of the tree, as well as its overall structure. Because there's so many different cultivars and varieties out there, it can be difficult to get that 100% ID. So we're now coming to the end of Pinces Gardens in a minute. So this section, which I'll quickly do a 360 on, is what I refer to as the main part of Pinces Gardens. So that's the last stretch. If I then do a 360, so that's the silk tassel, the common ash in the background, apple tree you can just about see, that little Japanese yellow cedar, the larch. Again, you can see even now how tall the giant redwood is. And dawn redwood right in front. It's like an avenue of mixed evergreens. And the amount of different hedges, there's so many. So yeah, I'm hoping to sort of build a solid idea on all of it. Shame somebody took the time to graffiti it rather than actually help the human race, but never mind. Looks like a lawson cypress, but again, need to double check a few things there. Funny, isn't it? I'm starting to lose daylight now, which is why the camera quality's dropped down. believe this is a bold cypress actually. If we have a quick look here, let's see some of the... Now this is the youngest one, so bald cypress, very similar to Dawn Redwood in its structure and growth habit. I mean, neither are native to the UK. Again, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is a bald cypress. I can't actually get to any of the... where is it? I'm looking for the fruit. Well, as you can see, it dropped pretty much all of its leaves, so a deciduous conifer. But if I could get access to one of the cones, which I don't think I'm going to, that isn't one of them. Lots of cones being dropped by that weeping evergreen. Unfortunately, all of the cones I want to access are out of reach. Never mind. As I said, pretty sure that's a bald cypress. Now this is an interesting evergreen that I'm just about to come up to. Sorry, shaky camera. So look at that. Some sort of weeping variety. Again, evergreen, no mass needles on the floor, and you can clearly see that 99% of its needles are happily on the tree. And then here's the bark. This is the bit that I just love. As you start looking up, it just puts things into perspective. How important and fantastic these trees are. What we'll try and do is work out what this tree is later. So here I believe is fruit of the tree, what's left of it. So this is... I'll get my evergreen book out later. But again, if you know the ID, feel free to comment. Fantastic, aren't they? Anyway, let's put that back for nature to enjoy. And look at this lovely weeping habit. If you just have a look. So you can see the male flowers. Yeah, this is a tree I'm going to start studying a lot more of. It's such a cool habit. Anyway, pretty sure it's a type of western red cedar, but unfortunately now it's quite late into New Year's Day, and it's now getting darker and darker, so the camera quality is going to be diminishing, unfortunately. But let's just enjoy the trees that we can see whilst we can. I believe these are types of hawthorns that we'd need to check actually, because actually I seem to remember one was a deciduous conifer, sorry, a deciduous cotoneaster. Another lovely, isn't it? How they along here there's so many different types of evergreen conifers. This is an interesting one. I believe it's a deodar cedar, young cedar. So the main three cedars that get planted in parks is Atlas cedar, which actually we're lucky we have one, which I'll show you that in a moment. Cedar of Lebanon, and deodar cedar. Now this I believe is a deodar cedar because when you look at the habit of the branches and twigs and leaves, they tend to be more drooping. Again, if you feel that I've got this ID wrong, and yeah, please let me know. But as I said, at the moment, I'm pretty sure this is a young deodar cedar, just by looking at its leaf arrangement, and its overall habit. The bark on young cedars is very different to when it matures. So even if I look at this now, I've got to get through here. This is very different to a mature type of cedar tree. That ivy growing. Right. Another type of view by the look of it there. So just one last look at the leaf arrangement here. Lovely addition to the park. There we go again. Fantastic. Bit of quick history. Again, this is the last stretch of Pinces Gardens, but not long ago, well I say not pre-COVID, so it was probably 4 years now, there was a large Lawson cypress from memory that was roughly, actually I think it was there, but there was root plate failure, so therefore there was a safety risk to the public. Council had to take it down, and in its place planted this, which I believe is a type of Japanese pine, or umbrella pine. If you have a look here, you need to count the needle clusters to be sure. And if I have a look, 1, 2, 5, and they can group the pines by the amount of needles per cluster into like different colours, like a yellow pine, that sort of thing. Very clever. As I said, I haven't studied pines enough to be able to give any sort of expert advice, but lovely pine, and like I say, I'll get an idea on this later on. A bit muddy around here. Another dawn redwood. Again, you can see that same growth habit where it's very almost bushy at the bottom, but actually thankfully it's bushy enough to stop people from clambering all over it. And unfortunately the one at St Thomas Park hasn't had the same fate, and the council have had to sort of sever nearly all the lower limbs, so it looks a bit half and half. But anyway, this storm redwood seems to be doing well, and we need to look after these guys because they're endangered species. So another pine. I believe it's another Austrian pine. So if we have a look at the needle, although actually this one I think is longer than the other. Yeah, this is a different pine. I'm just going to borrow that for a moment so you can see. Very important that when you identify pines, roughly how long. These are very long needles. As you can see, there's two, and they're practically the length of my entire hand, so an adult hand. So I thought this was an Austrian pine, but I'm actually thinking this is not now, but that will be something on my to-do list. So let's have a quick look here. Oh, that's really cool. Look, you can see the young cones forming. I'll try and get underneath the canopy. And you can see some of the cones on the ground. Unfortunately, most of them have been stamped in, so look at that. to get to the canopy, but right. I think unfortunately a lot of the cones I was going to hopefully show you have either been eaten by squirrels or I've got so trodden into the soil that I can't really get you one. However, I think if I gently pull this branch down, you might be able to roughly see. I'll have to double check. It could be an Australian pine again, but it just seems the needle length seems to be a lot longer than what I was expecting. At least on the ones I had earlier. Okay, gently put that back. You can actually see now, thanks to the silhouette, you can actually see the clusters of the female cones, and they're sort of in groups of 3. Looking at it, maybe 4, but mainly 3, so that will help us with the ID later. Right. Point to anyone who can ID this tree. Unfortunately, this was like this before I started all my studies, so I would have no idea of knowing what species of tree this was. Looking at its growth habit, possibly a western red cedar, but again, just a guess. But it's good to see that they've left this here as a reserve for nature. You know, all the small invertebrates, they still need somewhere to feed and live, rather than just digging it out. This is the Atlas cedar. This one's a blue variety, endangered, unfortunately. Now, because it's getting so dark, you can't really see, but you can just about see. Unfortunately, again, you can see the camera quality is massively dropped now, but the top part of the tree, sorry, fat thumb in the way, snapped off many years ago. Again, when I started studying this tree was quite a few years ago, and even then it didn't have the top part of the tree. That is not a clean cut, that is a snap or a break, so that would have been a natural occurrence. Again, these type of trees don't tend to succumb to disease, not in the same way as deciduous trees anyway. So I can only assume that it could be a lightning strike, or it could just be severe storm damage. But again, a long time ago. But luckily, the tree itself is very healthy, producing both male and female flowers. And you can see on the ground this carpet of almost like little brown caterpillars. But they're not caterpillars, these are the old shed male flowers. So with these type of cedar trees, so this blue Atlas cedar is monoecious, which means the male and female cones are on the same tree but different parts. And again, the job of these little guys, they don't look like they're much now, but during the flowering season will be full of pollen, and they'll be almost like yellow, and they will shed billions and billions of particles of pollen to get to the female parts of the flower. And we're going to have a look at the female cones now. Now, they won't be on the ground typically, because they'll only be on the ground once they're mature, and usually the squirrels have eaten them. But I think if we're lucky, I mean, you can actually see here, if I just move up, the barrel cones, as people call them. They are the maturing female cones. Now, it does take a few years for them to reach full maturity, and again, the seeds will then get dispersed by a mixture of the wind and also sometimes squirrels. Now, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to get any of these female cones because I'm not tall enough, and they're all on the high part, which is a shame, because I'd like to show you one of the cones, but you might be able to see roughly there. that group there. So they're about half mature. If we take a few steps back and fully appreciate how brilliant this tree is. Whoops. I do hope I can show you. Well, that's a shame where, well, I don't know actually. So this has been snapped off. I don't know if that was accident or not, but let's have a quick look. No, we weren't lucky. There's no female cones on there. So let's see, before it gets too dark, if we can get to part of the tree without causing any damage. Well, if I was just a foot taller, that wouldn't be an issue. Might be able to do that. Oh god, it's going to get very muddy. That would be right, so you can just about see a female cone there. Very sticky to the touch. And as I said, as they get older, they'll become more papery and disperse to seed. Squirrels quite happily nibble on them. Right, so luckily, no damage to the tree. So if I just move back, so actually missed flowering season, at least for the male flowers. It tends to flower a few months before, maybe around September, October time, if I remember correctly. Right, so what we'll do now is another interesting conifer. Looks like a type of Lawson cypress. A very pretty type of holly by the look of it. Female holly, again, you can tell because it's got berries. If it's male, it will only make pollen, and therefore you don't get your iconic berries. I believe another type of Lawson cypress. Now, this is a cool one, monkey puzzle. From memory, well, it's an endangered species. Pretty sure it's native to Chile. And the reason they call it the monkey puzzle tree, if you were a monkey with soft paws, how can you safely clamber on this when literally every leaf blade is like a blade of glass? It is, they are so pointy. I mean, even the bark is covered. So extremely challenging. So that's what I believe it's called the monkey puzzle tree, because it is a puzzle to climb. Safely anyway. Now, this is quite a young one. Again, these fall into the category, they're an evergreen, not native to the UK. Dioecious in nature. So again, separate male and female trees. Being completely honest, I wouldn't be able to tell you what it is because I have not noticed it flower yet. So I don't know at what maturity this tree will produce the flowers to help us identify the tree, because I think without the flowers you are going to really struggle to confirm if this is a male or female monkey puzzle tree. But yeah, great to see. I forgot, I spun round too quickly, but this very small tree in front here, which has been completely unnoticed, is a young maidenhair. difficult to sort of make out compared to the mature one we saw about half an hour ago. But again, you've got those sort of knobbly twigs. Again, at this age, I've not noticed it flower, so I can't tell you if it's a male or female, but based on all the other maidenhair trees in Exeter, I'd have to probably say it's female. But I tell you what, I'd love it if that was a male maidenhair tree, because I could then study the male flowers. But either way, beautiful, and hopefully will grow into a happy, mature tree. Yeah, another pretty short Lawson cypress, although it's got the sort of like, again, it's sort of the top part, but yeah, I will be happy when I've got my identification of evergreens and Pinces gardens fully under wrap. Now, there were quite a lot of elm trees along here, but they succumbed to Dutch elm disease, so the council stripped a lot of them, which is why that barrier is more open. Have to confirm what type of tree that one is. Difficult to say. It's sort of growing half in and half out of the allotment. Again, the one with the leaves on, that looks like it's a continuation of the hornbeam. So it looks like they intermittently planted hornbeam down right between the allotment and Pinces gardens, which is great because hornbeam's a native tree species. And then you've got this little trio of pines. You can just see those three there. Hopefully, we have a quick look if it's another Austrian pine or not. Sometimes I just love looking at the centre part. And look how beautiful that is. And then what we need to try and do, and even better, without pulling any fresh needles, is we've got one here. Okay, so it's dry. So again, 2 needles per plaster. So I can just about do that. Again, roughly the size of my hand. So unless there's anything different about this and the other pines, I would hazard to say that it looks like they've just planted Austrian pines. But again, there was that one that had the particularly long needles, so that might be slightly different. Trying to find a cone that hasn't been squashed in the ground, although, there we go, there's one. So again, it's virtually the same. Put money on it, they're Austrian pines, but we shall see. And then we've got another dawn redwood. Now I can't film to the side because there's a children's park just to the side here, so that's as far as I can really film. But that is, again, another dawn redwood. And then the big tree to the side here, I think, looking at the buds and the shape, I think that's a red oak, I think, that one there. So that is Pinces garden. So I think we've pretty much covered everything. So I hope you enjoyed that.